Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it is wonderful to be here. Under this administration, we've seen a drastic transition in the CEQ's role. The agency has become heavily politicized, transforming its role from overseeing NEPA compliance issues to waging war against domestic energy production. As the sole representative of the state of Wyoming, a state whose economy lives and dies on energy production and agriculture, I represent the voices of the millions of people who suffer economically at the hands of Washington bureaucrats who seek to expand their regulatory role through radical social agendas. We've seen you, Chairwoman Mallory, prioritize so-called environmental justice rather than focusing on environmental resilience as the agency supports policies that encouraged increased neglect rather than management. Ironically, we are seeing injustice directed towards vulnerable communities in the name of environmentalism. We're seeing vulnerable citizens struggle to pay their bills due to high energy costs, all while the current administration perpetuates leasing moratoriums on federal lands, stifles American energy production, and increases our dependence on imports. We're seeing federal agencies continue to release proposed rules that lock us out of our lands, hurting not only our energy producers, but our agricultural practices and creating greater uncertainty for the small family farm, while also furthering a housing shortage. The common theme of this administration's energy policy has been an attack on low-income communities, the very people you claim to be protecting. So my question is, do you believe that it is environmental justice to adopt and enforce policies that increase the cost of housing, food, and energy?
Thank you, Congressman, for that question. I believe that the work that we are doing is focused on a transition to a clean energy economy that will benefit all
So
communities.
in other words, environmental justice has nothing to do with making sure that folks are able to access affordable housing, food, and energy. Is that what your testimony is?
Environmental justice has everything to do to make sure that all communities have the benefits of clean air, clean water, and safe environments.
Chairman Mallory, when you do adopt policies that increase the cost of food, housing, and energy, wouldn't you agree that such policies disproportionately impact low-income communities?
Congressman, I agree that low-income communities are disproportionately impacted by all of the problems in our society, which is why we're trying to focus on those
including policies that increase the cost of food, housing, and energy, correct?
Congressman, I think that all policies, we are working towards making sure that the costs are reduced. That is what the president's economic agenda.
But that isn't what you're doing. That isn't your agenda. Your agenda actually increases the cost of housing, food, and energy. We know that for a fact.
I think for a fact we know that the costs are coming down, that we are working towards that, and they are coming down.
So you're admitting the fact that they are increasing the cost of those, but
I'm
they're
not admitting
decreasing
anything, Congressman.
perhaps.
No,
okay.
Not admitting anything. Thank
All right.
you.
Because this administration has focused on environmental justice, whatever that means, rather than on lowering energy costs and strengthening the reliability of our energy grid, I will soon introduce the Energy Poverty Prevention and Accountability Act, which will highlight communities who are disproportionately impacted by policies that stifle affordable and reliable energy production. This bill will require the GAO, OMB, and CBO to analyze the economic impacts of legislation and executive actions such as moratoriums, proposed rules, and delays, thus allowing for greater transparency and accountability for the policies that raise energy costs. Chairwoman Mallory, if the GAO report shows that the policies coming from your agency disproportionately increase energy prices, thereby spreading energy poverty among vulnerable communities, will you rescind those policies?
Congressman, I'm sure that the policies you're talking about are not coming from my agency, but we will certainly read anything from GAO and consider it.
Okay, and you've highlighted the President's 30 by 30 initiative with great pride in your testimony. I can tell you, coming from a state where 48% of our surface estate is owned by the feds, none of us are really celebrating the 30 by 30 initiative because we know what it's intended to do to Wyoming. Do you believe that taking someone's ability to generate revenue on their own property is good public policy?
Thank you, Congressman. That is not what America the Beautiful does. America the Beautiful is about dealing with land that is primarily owned by the federal government and working in voluntary ways with communities that want to be part of our system.
Have you read the report where it talks about imposing policies on state and private land?
I've read the report and I know how it functions.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.